Welcome to Conspiracy Deconstructed.
Great to be here.
Today, we're jumping right in. No messing around. We're tackling maybe the biggest, the most enduring maritime mystery ever. Forget all the talk about the Bermuda Triangle for a second.
Yeah, this is the real deal, the OG ghost ship story, you might say.
Exactly. It's a story that's been twisted and sensationalized for, over 150 years now?
We're diving deep into the mystery of the Mary Celeste.
So picture this. It's December 1872. You're out on the open Atlantic Ocean, maybe 400 miles east of the Azores Islands.
Lonely place to be.
Very. And the British brig, the Dei Gratia, spots another ship. A big one, a brigantine sailing kind of erratically.
Not quite right. Sails are partly set, she's moving, but something's definitely off.
The captain of this Dei Gratia, David Reed Morehouse, actually knows the other captain. He recognizes the vessel. It's the American brigantine, the Mary Celeste.
And that's weird straight away. The Mary Celeste shouldn't have been there. She left New York for Genoa, Italy, a full 8 days before the Dei Gratia even set sail.
So she should have been way ahead, right? Not drifting around near that.
Exactly. She was ahead of schedule, if anything, based on her departure. Definitely not supposed to be seemingly adrift.
So Morehouse sends his first mate, Oliver DeVoe, over with a boarding party. And what they find... well, it kicks off this whole frenzy of speculation that honestly just buried the truth almost immediately.
What did they find? Was the ship wrecked?
No, that's the thing. She was mostly okay. I mean, yes, some minor damage, a bit of water in the hold, but she wasn't sinking. Not even close.
And the supplies?
Plenty. Enough food and water for 6 months. The cargo, this is important, 7,701 barrels of raw industrial alcohol was mostly intact. Still there.
Personal stuff, too.
Yeah, clothes, navigational tools the crew would need. There was even evidence of meals being planned or maybe recently finished. All just left.
But no people.
None. 10 souls vanished. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their little 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 7 experienced crewmen gone.
No bodies, no note, no sign of a fight, nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Just an empty, mostly functional ship sailing on its own.
Wow. Okay, I can see why people's minds would go wild.
Exactly. When reality gives you a blank slate like that, human imagination just floods in, doesn't it? And this information vacuum, it immediately spawned these incredible, outlandish theories.
The kind of stuff that makes for great stories, I bet.
Oh, the classics. Theories that still get talked about. First up, aliens. Seriously, the crew was snatched, beamed up, whatever, by extraterrestrials.
Or maybe ghosts. Yeah. Supernatural forces turning the Mary Celeste into the ultimate ghost ship, cursed to sail forever.
That's the one. Or, if you prefer your monsters a bit more biological.
Let me guess. Giant squid.
Kraken.
You got it. A massive sea monster, giant octopus, colossal squid, somehow, reached up and plucked 10 people off the deck.
Without capsizing the ship or messing up the cargo. Seems unlikely.
Just a tad. And then there was the slightly more grounded theory, but still pretty dramatic.
What was that? Toxic fumes. The idea was that the industrial alcohol cargo started leaking fumes, drove everyone completely mad, leading to mass violence, maybe murder-suicide, or just everyone jumping overboard in a frenzy.
Okay, that one sounds marginally more plausible than the Kraken, at least.
Marginally. Okay, so let's unpack all this. Here on Conspiracy Deconstructed, we're cutting through all that. We're stripping away the century and a half of, frankly, made-up stuff, the deliberate misinformation, the crazy stories amplified by writers like Arthur Conan Doyle.
We're going back to basics.
Exactly. Straight to the original court testimony from the Salvage hearing, and then bringing in modern science to look at the physical evidence. Because the real explanation, while incredibly tragic, turns out to be, well, completely rational.
Right. To really understand what likely happened, we need to ground ourselves in the facts. Start with the ship itself and the man in charge.
The Mary Celeste. What kind of ship was she?
She was an American brigantine, about 282 tons. Interestingly, she wasn't originally called the Mary Celeste. She was built in Nova Scotia, Canada as the Amazon.
Oh, so she had a history already.
She did. She'd actually been wrecked and salvaged before being refitted and renamed the Mary Celeste. Maybe a bit of foreshadowing there, who knows?
And the captain, Benjamin Spooner Briggs. What was he like? Because, if he was some kind of tyrant, the mutiny theories might make more sense.
That's a key point. But everything we know about Briggs points in the opposite direction. He was from Marion, Massachusetts, from a family with a strong maritime background, highly respected.
What did people say about him?
He was known as devoutly religious, didn't drink alcohol, very rational, and crucially, a vastly experienced master mariner. This wasn't some rookie captain.
And he owned part of the ship, right?
Yes, he'd bought a significant share in her earlier in 1872. So this wasn't just another voyage for him. It was his investment, his livelihood, tied up in this vessel. He had skin in the game.
And his family was with him?
That's right. Which also tells you something about his assessment of the risk. He'd taken pains to make the captain's quarters comfortable, almost like a home. He left his older son, Arthur, who was 7, back in Massachusetts for school.
Probably a tough decision.
Must've been. But his wife, Sarah Elizabeth, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia Matilda, were on board with him. It points towards the idea of a relatively safe, planned family voyage, not some desperate high-risk venture.
So they set sail from Staten Island, New York, on November 7th, 1872. Destination, Genoa, Italy. And the cargo.
That infamous cargo. 7,701 barrels of raw industrial alcohol, also called denatured alcohol. It's potent stuff used for industrial processes, not for drinking. A volatile cargo, for sure. Yeah. Shipped by a company called Meisner, Ackerman & Co.
Do we know anything about the early part of the voyage?
We do, actually, thanks to Sarah's last letters home. They definitely had some rough weather early on. Not unusual for the North Atlantic in November, but challenging nonetheless.
And the ship's log, what did it say?
Well, they found the ship's log slate. That's like a temporary chalkboard sailors used for notes before writing in the official logbook. The last entry on the slate was recorded at 8 a.m. on November 25th.
And their position?
It indicated they were near the eastern point of Santa Maria Island, which is one of the Azores.
Okay, so that gives us a last known position and time. Then, nothing until the Dei Gratia spots her on December 4th.
Right. And when mate Oliver Deveau boarded, he confirmed those key details we talked about. Ship was seaworthy, but definitely not in perfect order.
Water in the hold.
About 3.5 feet. Now, for a ship that size, that's concerning. Definitely something you need to pump out. But it doesn't necessarily mean she's about to sink immediately.
But there was a problem with the pumps, wasn't there?
Yes, and this is really significant. Deveau reported that one of the ship's 2 bilge pumps was found disassembled, just lying there on the deck in pieces.
That's not good. If you've got water coming in, even slowly, and one of your pumps is out of action,
it's a major red flag. You've lost half your capacity to deal with the water. It instantly escalates the situation.
And what about the idea that they just vanished instantly, like poof?
Deveau's findings pretty much kill that theory. The most crucial piece of evidence, the ship's only lifeboat, a small boat called a yawl, was missing.
Gone.
Completely gone. And along with it, the vital tools for navigation if you're in a small boat, the sextant, the chronometer potentially, and the ship's papers relating to the cargo.
So they didn't just disappear, they took things. Necessary things.
Exactly. It points strongly towards a deliberate decision to abandon the main vessel, taking survival essentials with them.
So Deveau and his men, they actually managed to sail the Mary Celeste themselves.
They did. They put a small prize crew aboard and sailed her about 800 miles to Gibraltar. That's where the salvage hearing was held.
And this is where the story takes another turn, right? From maritime incident to conspiracy fuel.
Precisely. The Vice-Admiralty Court hearing in Gibraltar should have been fairly routine. Figure out how much the Dei Gratia crew should be paid for salvaging the ship and cargo. Simple enough.
But it wasn't.
Not at all. Thanks largely to the guy in charge, the Attorney General for Gibraltar, a man named Frederick Solly Flood.
Described as an excitable Irishman in some accounts.
That's the one. And apparently he lived up to the description. Solly Flood immediately suspected foul play. He just couldn't accept the simple explanation.
What was his theory?
He seemed convinced it was either insurance fraud, maybe involving Briggs somehow, or, more sensationally, that the Dei Gratia crew, the rescuers, had actually murdered Briggs, his family, and the crew.
Murdered them, and then staged the scene.
Yes, staging the abandonment to cover their tracks and then claim the salvage money. He was deeply suspicious of Captain Morehouse and his men.
What was his evidence for this? It sounds pretty wild.
It was flimsy, based on things he completely misinterpreted. He found an old, rusty sword under Captain Briggs' bunk.
Okay. Lots of captains probably had old swords.
Right. But Solly Flood latched onto it, suggesting it was evidence of a mutiny or violence. He also claimed he found suspicious reddish-brown stains on the deck rails and hinted they were bloodstains.
Bloodstains? Did anyone check?
They did, eventually.
Yeah.
But Solly Flood built this whole narrative of violence and deceit. Was this normal back then, this level of suspicion in salvage cases?
Salvage claims could definitely be contentious. There was often big money involved. The Mary Celeste and her cargo were insured for $46,000, a fortune back then. But Solly Flood's level of conspiracy thinking, accusing the Salvers of mass murder with so little evidence, seems extreme.
Yeah, he seems to have let his imagination run away with him. He just couldn't believe a competent captain would abandon a ship that was still floating. So he invented crime instead of looking for a maritime reason.
And his suspicions actually had consequences, didn't they? The Salvage Award.
Hugely consequential. Because of Solly Flood's relentless suspicion, the court awarded the Dei Gratia crew only about 1/6 of the total insured value. A shockingly low amount for the risk and effort involved.
Which must have looked like.
Like the court wasn't entirely sure they were innocent. It sent a message, intended or not, that the authorities still had doubts. And that just poured fuel on the fire of public speculation and the early conspiracy theories. If the court suspected them, maybe they did know something.
But did anyone actually prove the stains were blood or the sword was used?
The crucial point. No. The official inquiry included a chemical analysis by a Dr. J. Patron in Gibraltar. His examination was definitive. The stains Solly Flood was so fixated on were not blood. Probably rust, maybe some wine stains, or salt residue, nothing sinister. And no evidence the sword was involved in anything.
So the whole basis for Solly Flood's murder mutiny theory just evaporated?
Scientifically, yes, it collapsed.
Yeah.
But the damage was done. The suspicion had been planted in the public mind. The idea of foul play was out there.
And then the story goes quiet for a bit until
12 years later, 1884. A young doctor, just starting his writing career, publishes a story. A certain Arthur Conan Doyle.
Before Sherlock Holmes.
Just before he hit it big with Holmes, yes. He wrote a fictional short story titled J. Habakkuk Jeffson's Statement. It was presented as a supposed survivor's account of the Mary Celeste.
But it was pure fiction.
Completely made up. Doyle added all sorts of sensational details, a struggle, a vengeful ex-slave, maybe even finding the ship in perfect condition with meals still warm on the table. Stuff that never actually happened.
And people believed it was real.
Many did. It blurred the lines between fact and fiction. And crucially, Doyle even got the ship's name slightly wrong in his story.
He called her the Mary Celeste, didn't he?
He did, Mary Celeste. That small error, combined with his thrilling but totally inaccurate story, is what really launched the vessel into the realm of global legend. Suddenly, everyone knew the story of the Mary Celeste, the ghost ship found in perfect, eerie condition. The legend overtook the reality, thanks in large part to Doyle.
Okay, so the legend is born, fueled by misinterpretation and fiction. Before we bring in the science to fully dismantle it, let's pause and really look at the evidence that people who believe in the weirder theories actually use. We need to understand why this story has such a grip.
Right, you have to appreciate the power of the narrative they've built. It often hinges on this idea of the ship being found frozen in time, defying logic.
Okay, let's call it evidence point 1, the perfect ship. The claim, as Doyle popularized it, is that the Mary Celeste was found in absolutely pristine condition. Sails perfectly set, everything neatly stowed, no sign of trouble.
And the implication is
that whatever happened must have been instantaneous. No storm, no struggle, no reason a human would choose to leave. Proponents point to the intact cargo, the personal items left neatly in the cabins, Sarah Briggs's sewing machine, Sophia's dolls.
They use that tidiness to argue against any kind of chaos or panic. It suggests an external force, something non-human, just plucked the crew away without disturbing anything. It removes human choice from the equation.
Then there's the big one, the detail everyone remembers, even if it's wrong. Evidence point 2, the meal on the table.
Ah, yes, the classic image.
The claim is that the boarding party found a hot meal still on the cabin table, maybe half-eaten, or cups of tea or coffee still warm, a perfect time capsule.
Psychologically, that's incredibly powerful, isn't it?
Totally. If they vanished mid-meal, well, that screams sudden, unexpected, catastrophic event. Not weather, not a slow leak.
It points directly towards things like alien abduction, or a sea monster attack that was over in seconds, or maybe that sudden madness theory, something instant.
It's the ultimate proof for the instantaneous vanishing idea. Now, evidence point 3 is a bit more technical, but crucial for the supernatural angle, the intact lifeboat.
Now, we know this isn't true from the actual reports.
Right. The court records are clear the lifeboat was gone. But some fictional accounts, and therefore some conspiracy theories that feed off them, insist the lifeboat was found still properly stowed and secured on the Mary Celeste.
And if the lifeboat was still there,
then the crew simply couldn't have left the ship deliberately. It forces the explanation away from human action entirely. If they didn't leave in the boat, how did they leave? Boom. Ghosts, aliens, dimensional portals, whatever. It's a fictional detail designed specifically to make the rational explanation impossible.
Clever in a way. Misleading, but clever.
And finally, evidence point 4, the unidentified violence. This loops back to Solly Flood. Despite the lack of actual proof, proponents of foul play theories often circle back to his initial suspicions.
They bring up the sword again.
The bloodied sword, the supposed stains on the deck, the suspicious circumstances of the low salvage award. They use all this to suggest there was violence, mutiny, murder by the crew, maybe pirates who somehow boarded, killed everyone, and vanished without a trace.
It gives the story a human antagonist, which people often find more satisfying than random chance or natural phenomena. A clear villain, even a fictional one.
Exactly. A mutinous sailor, a crazed captain, pirates. It fits a familiar narrative structure, much neater than just saying, well, they probably had some really, really bad luck after making a difficult choice. Okay, we've laid out the sensational theories, the evidence used to support them. Now let's bring it back to reality. Time for the deconstruction, using the actual documented facts from the Gibraltar court records and what we know from science.
Right, let's swap the fiction for the facts. We need to go through those points one by one, starting with the absolute core of the legend. That meal on the table.
Was there a hot meal, warm coffee, anything like that?
Absolutely, unequivocally no. The court testimony from mate Oliver DeVoe, the first man aboard from the Dei Gratia, is crystal clear on this. He stated there was nothing to eat or drink on the cabin table, period.
And the galley, the kitchen.
DeVoe noted the galley stove was cold. In fact, it had been knocked out of place, probably by the rough seas they'd encountered earlier. So the idea of a recently cooked meal or warm drinks is pure invention, likely stemming from Doyle's story or later embellishments.
Okay, myth busted. What about the ship being in perfect condition, with sails all nicely set?
Also completely wrong, another fabrication. The Dei Gratia crew reported very specifically which sails were set. It was only 3. The lower topsail, the jib, and the foretopmast staysail.
That doesn't sound like full sail.
Not at all. It's what's called being under short canvas. And critically, they noted that 2 major sails, the foresail and the upper topsail, were gone, apparently blown away. Other sails were properly furled, meaning rolled up and secured.
So the state of the sails actually suggests they had been through heavy weather?
Precisely. Sailing under reduced sail like that is exactly what a skilled captain like Briggs would do during or after a storm. The ship was operational, yes, but far from the pristine, untouched image the legend paints.
All right, now the lifeboat. The linchpin for the supernatural theories, if it was still there.
Again, the court testimony is unambiguous. DeVoe and Captain Morehouse both testified. The ship's single lifeboat, the yawl, was not on board. It was gone.
And they knew it was launched deliberately, right? Not just washed away.
Yes, and this is crucial. DeVoe documented specific physical evidence. A spar, like a wooden beam, had been lashed across the stern davits, the arms used to lower the boat. More importantly, a section of the ship's port side rail, the low wall around the deck, had been physically removed and was found laid on the deck.
Why remove a piece of the railing?
You'd only do that for one reason: to make it easier and faster to launch the boat over the side, especially if the seas were rough or you were in a hurry. It creates a clear opening. It's definitive proof that the crew chose to launch the boat and leave the ship.
So the mystery instantly shifts. It's not how did they vanish into thin air, it's why did they abandon a ship that was still afloat?
Exactly. It becomes a question of motivation, not magic.
And the final point, the supposed violence, the bloodstains, the sword.
As we mentioned, Solly Flood's suspicions were proven baseless by Dr. Patron's chemical analysis. No trace of blood was found on the sword or the deck rails. The entire mutiny murder angle, while dramatic, simply has zero factual evidence supporting it from the scene itself.
Okay. So no ghosts, no aliens, no sea monsters, no mutiny. We have an experienced, rational captain. We know he deliberately abandoned ship with his family and crew in the lifeboat. The question is, why? What could possibly scare a seasoned captain like Briggs into taking such a drastic step?
The answer seems to lie in a terrifying convergence of several problems, creating a situation where abandonment, however risky, seemed like the safer option at that moment. It starts with his location and the ship's condition.
We know his last log slate entry put him near Santa Maria Island in the Azores on November 25th.
Right, but here's where things get complicated. Modern analysis, particularly by oceanographer Phil Richardson using historical weather data and drift patterns, strongly suggests Briggs was significantly off course.
How far off?
Possibly as much as 120 miles west of where he thought he was.
Wow. How could that happen?
The most likely culprit is the ship's chronometer, the very precise clock needed to calculate longitude at sea. If it was faulty, even by a small amount each day, the error would accumulate. He'd be calculating his position incorrectly.
And why is being 120 miles off position so critical?
Because he would have been expecting to sight land, Santa Maria Island, based on his calculations. When it didn't appear when or where he expected, doubt would creep in. Serious doubt about his position, his instruments, his safety. He'd feel lost, isolated, and much more vulnerable.
Okay, so he's possibly lost. And then there's the water in the hold and that broken pump.
Exactly. Remember, 3.5 feet of wire, which is worrying, and one of the two pumps is disassembled on deck, useless. Now, why was the pump broken? The ship's previous cargo was coal. It's highly likely that coal dust and debris had clogged or damaged the pump mechanism.
So he's taking on water, he's lost half his ability to pump it out, and he's not even sure where he is.
And critically, because the hold was packed tight with those 701 barrels of alcohol, he couldn't just look down and see how bad the leak was or where it was coming petting. He couldn't gauge the true level of danger from the water itself. For an experienced captain, that combination, water ingress, failing equipment, geographic uncertainty is already a crisis.
But was that enough to abandon ship? It still seems extreme.
Probably not, on its own. That's where the cargo comes in, the real trigger.
The industrial alcohol.
Yes, and not just the alcohol, but the barrels. Remember DeVoe reported finding 9 barrels empty in the hold when they salvaged the ship?
Yeah, what's the significance of that?
Research revealed a crucial detail about those specific barrels. They weren't made of the standard white oak, which is dense and good for liquids. Those 9 empty barrels were made of red oak.
And red oak is different.
Massively different for holding volatile liquids. Red oak is much more porous. It's known to leak far more easily, especially something like alcohol, which readily evaporates.
Okay, so leaky barrels. Why is that suddenly catastrophic?
Think about the temperature change. The cargo was loaded in New York in November, freezing cold.
Then they sailed south towards the Azores, much warmer.
Exactly. As the temperature rose, the alcohol inside those porous red oak barrels would have started to vaporize much faster. The pressure inside the barrels increases, forcing out more vapor. Alcohol vapor is heavier than air, so it would have pooled invisibly in the bottom of the hold.
So the hold is filling up with explosive fumes.
Potentially, yes. Captain Briggs would have known this. He's sailing with a highly flammable, volatile cargo, known to produce dangerous fumes. He smells the alcohol. He knows barrels are leaking. He likely feared not just a fire, but a massive explosion that could rip the ship apart. The fear of fire or explosion would likely outweigh the fear of the water in the hold.
This leads us to the core scientific explanation, doesn't it? The one that resolves the paradox of a terrifying event, leaving no scorch marks.
It does. The theory was first proposed in a basic form back in 1940 by a Dr. Oliver W. Cobb, but it's been refined and scientifically validated much more recently. It revolves around the idea of a non-combusting explosion, or more accurately, a deflagration.
A deflagration? What's that?
It's different from a detonation, like dynamite. Think of it as a very, very rapid burn that creates a pressure wave. Dr. Andrea Sella at University College London did experiments replicating the conditions in the Mary Celeste's hold.
What did they do?
They used butane gas, which behaves similarly to alcohol vapor, in a model of the hold. They found that if you get the mixture of vapor and air just right, the stoichiometric ratio, chemists call it even a small spark, could trigger an incredibly fast ignition.
But not a fire that burns things.
That's the key. It creates a spectacular wave of flame, as Dr. Sella described it, and a powerful pressure wave or blast. This blast would be easily strong enough to do what was observed, blow the main cargo hatches off their coverings. They were found displaced on the deck.
But crucially,
the fuel, the vapor is consumed almost instantly in this pressure wave. It happens too fast to transfer significant heat to the surroundings, so you get the terrifying boom and the blast effect, but it leaves no soot and no burning or scorching.
Wow. So Captain Briggs hears and feels this massive whoosh or bang from the hold, sees the heavy wooden hatch covers blown off, smells the intense alcohol fumes.
What does he think? He thinks the entire cargo is about to go up in a real, sustained inferno. He doesn't know it was a contained pressure wave. He thinks it's the prelude to total disaster. That broken pump, the water in the hold being lost, it all clicks into place as overwhelming danger.
The order to abandon ship wasn't panic. It was a rational response to perceived imminent catastrophe.
Exactly. A frantic but calculated race against the explosion he thought was coming any second. The evidence of haste fits perfectly. The dropped pipe found on deck, the ship's compass knocked out of its binnacle, taking the vital sextant and chronometer, but maybe leaving other things behind.
So how did they actually leave?
The evidence suggests Briggs did a few things quickly. He likely ordered the sails backed or the yards braced to back, basically turning the square sails to act like brakes, stopping the ship's forward motion. Then they launched the yawl. Him, Sarah, little Sophia, the 7 crewmen. They grabbed the navigational instruments and ship's papers.
And they tethered the lifeboat to the Mary Celeste.
It seems almost certain they did. The logical thing would be to tow the yawl behind the ship for a short time, maybe waiting for the fumes to clear or to assess the situation from a safe distance. The most likely candidate for a tow rope, used in haste, was the peak halyard.
What's a peak halyard?
It's a rope used to hoist the upper corner, the peak, of one of the fore and aft sails. It's strong vertically, but it's absolutely not designed for the sudden, jerking, horizontal strain of towing a heavy lifeboat in potentially choppy seas.
I use that then.
Because it was likely right there, easily accessible in their rush. It screams urgency, grab the nearest strong-looking rope, but it was fatally unsuitable for the job.
So, they're in the yawl, maybe 100 feet behind the Mary Celeste, tethered by this inadequate rope. The ship is stopped, or nearly stopped. They're waiting. And then
the final piece of tragic misfortune. The weather changes abruptly. A sudden squall hits, or maybe just a strong, fresh northerly wind, as the Dei Gratia logs later reported in the area.
And the wind catches the sails.
Even though Briggs had tried to stop the ship, the wind filling those big square sails would have been enough. The Mary Celeste suddenly lurches forward, gathering way much faster than expected.
The strain on the tow rope.
The peak halyard, never meant for this, snaps instantly under the sudden, immense tension.
Oh no.
In a second, the 10 people in the heavily laden, small, open yawl boat are separated from their ship, adrift in the vastness of the mid-Atlantic.
And the Mary Celeste just sails on.
Sails on erratically, under those few remaining sails, until the Dei Gratia finds her 9 or 10 days later. The yawl, with everyone aboard, well, it was never seen again, simply, tragically, lost at sea. So when you piece it all together, the faulty chronometer, the leaky red oak barrels, the temperature change, the clogged pump, the non-scorching explosion, the inadequate tow rope, the sudden squall, you get a complete, scientifically plausible chain of events.
No ghosts needed. Just a cascade of explainable misfortunes leading to a terrible decision made under extreme duress, followed by one final, fatal bit of bad luck.
Exactly. Not a supernatural vanishing, but a tragic failure of a temporary safety measure.
And yet, the ghost story persists. Massively. Why do you think that is? Why does the fiction still seem more powerful than the facts, even now?
Well, I think it comes down to basic human psychology, really. The truth, while fascinating in its own way, is messy. It involves physics, chemistry, nautical practice, compounding errors. It's complex.
And ultimately unsatisfying.
Profoundly unsatisfying for many. An experienced captain, a good man defeated by leaky barrels and bad luck. There's no villain, no monster, no cosmic mystery. The human mind often craves a clearer narrative, a definite cause, a force to blame, be it Kraken, aliens, or even just a mutinous sailor.
The ambiguity is the killer.
It is.
Right.
Especially the lack of bodies. If they'd found wreckage of the yawl, or if there had been clear signs of fire damage on the Mary Celeste, the story would likely have faded. But that complete absence leaves a void. And human nature hates a void. We rush to fill it with explanations, and the fantastic ones are often the most compelling.
And when we think about the actual people involved, it moves beyond just a puzzle, doesn't it? It becomes this heartbreaking human story.
Absolutely. It wasn't just the crew. It was Captain Benjamin Briggs. It was his wife, Sarah, who'd written home about making the cabin feel homelike. And it was their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, playing with her dolls on board.
That detail about the dolls always gets me. They found her dolls left behind.
It makes it incredibly real and poignant. They died together, husband, wife, and child, in that small boat, lost in the immensity of the ocean. A truly awful end.
But perhaps the most devastating part of the human story is the one left behind.
Arthur, the 7-year-old son, left safely in Marion, Massachusetts with his grandmother to go to school.
And he didn't even know for months, did he?
No. They shielded him from the news all through that winter. Can you imagine? He's waiting for his parents and little sister to come home from their voyage, doing his chores, being told to be brave.
His grandmother wrote about him trying not to mind the hoot owls at night and reciting the verse, "I will not fear." It's just gut-wrenching.
The full weight of his loss, becoming an orphan, apparently didn't hit him until months later when the family's salvaged belongings finally arrived back from Gibraltar. items bearing the official U.S. consul's seal.
We kind of think.
His mother's melodeon, a type of small organ. His father's navigational instruments, maybe that controversial sword.
Yeah.
And perhaps most painfully, his little sister Sophia's dolls, including one specifically mentioned as Sarah Jane with the broken arm.
Seeing those everyday objects must have made the loss horribly concrete.
It must have been the moment the terrible truth became undeniable.
And this immense personal tragedy, combined with the mystery, just cemented the ship's reputation, didn't it? People started seeing her as genuinely cursed or haunted.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
She already had a slightly unlucky history as the Amazon. After the 1872 incident, she became toxic. Nobody wanted her.
Did the owners try to sell her?
One of the principal owners, Captain James H. Winchester, who had originally appointed Briggs, lost a fortune trying to offload her. He eventually sold her at a huge loss. He himself said she had the reputation of being unlucky or like a haunted house.
He told a story about that, didn't he?
Yeah, a potential buyer came to look at her, saw the name Mary Celeste painted on the stern, apparently yelled, "Oh, Lordy," and ran straight back to the ferry, refusing to even set foot on board.
Wow. So the ship herself carried this stigma.
She did. Passed through various hands, apparently involved in more unprofitable voyages, always carrying that shadow, until her final voyage, which ended in a way that's almost poetically ironic.
This was the insurance fraud attempt.
Exactly. In 1885, 13 years after the famous vanishing, her last captain, a man named Gilman E. Parker, decided to cash in on her bad luck.
Oh.
He concocted a plan to deliberately wreck her on a reef in Haiti and claim a huge amount of insurance money on the ship and supposedly valuable cargo.
But the cargo wasn't valuable.
Not even slightly. This is the absurd part. To maximize the fraudulent claim, the manifest listed valuable goods. But what Parker actually loaded was worthless junk. Spoiled fish, cheap rubber boots described as fine leather, barrels of undrinkable ale, and supposedly crates of dog collars.
Dog collar, seriously.
Apparently so. All insured for far more than it was worth. He then intentionally sailed the Mary Celeste, in perfectly good weather, straight onto Rochelle Bank, a well-known coral reef near Haiti.
Just ran her aground on purpose.
Boom, deliberately. Then he apparently ordered the crew to chop down the mast to make it look like storm damage, maybe set a small fire, which quickly went out. And then, according to testimony, invited everyone to help themselves to the ship's liquor before they all rowed ashore in the yawl. A staged shipwreck.
It's bizarre. The ship famous for a mysterious, probably accidental abandonment in a lifeboat is finally destroyed in a deliberate, criminal, and frankly incompetent abandonment.
The irony is thick, isn't it? And the fraud was immediately obvious. The insurers investigated, found the worthless cargo, and Parker and his associates were put on trial for barratry, intentionally wrecking a ship.
Was he convicted?
Technically, no. The trial ended in a hung jury, supposedly because some jurors balked at the potential death penalty for the crime back then. But the curse seemed to persist. Parker died just 3 months after the trial. Several other people involved in the conspiracy faced financial ruin or reportedly died by suicide not long after.
So the Mary Celeste never sailed again. Her final resting place is that reef in Haiti.
That's right, broken up on the Rochelle Bank. An ignominious end that somehow solidified her legend, not really as a ghost ship, but as a vessel fundamentally marked by tragedy, mystery, and human misfortune.
So when you strip away the ghosts and the krakens, the Mary Celeste story becomes this powerful case study in how we react to the unknown, how narrative often triumphs over facts.
Absolutely. The core reality seems to be a competent, rational captain faced what he genuinely believed was an immediate, lethal threat. A perfect storm of circumstances, the leak, the broken pump being lost, and then that terrifying pressure wave explosion from the alcohol fumes.
His decision to abandon ship, while ultimately fatal, was based on the terrifying evidence he had at that moment.
It was a calculated risk based on perceived imminent doom. The tragedy wasn't the vanishing, it was the catastrophic failure of that temporary safety measure, the tow rope snapping.
And if we look at the bigger picture, what does the Mary Celeste teach us?
I think it's a profound lesson in how ambiguity terrifies us. Nature abhors a vacuum, and the human mind abhors an unsolved mystery. We rush to fill the gaps with explanations, and the more dramatic or fantastical the explanation, the better it seems to stick.
The ghost story survived because it offered a simple, albeit supernatural, answer.
While the real story involving porous oak, barometric pressure, faulty pumps, chronometer errors, and sheer bad luck, it's just too complex, too random, too unsatisfyingly real for many people to accept. The mundane tragedy gets overshadowed by the compelling myth.
Which brings us to a final thought, something for you, our listeners, to chew on. We know from the evidence specifically that removed section of the port railing found on deck by the Dei Gratia crew that Captain Briggs took deliberate, if hasty, steps to launch the yawl safely. His actions were driven by that sudden, terrifying pressure wave explosion.
So here's the question, playing devil's advocate with fate. What if Briggs had hesitated? What if he'd waited just one more hour before giving the order to abandon ship? Maybe waited for the fumes to clear, maybe tried again to fix that pump.
Would that hour have made all the difference? Would the squall that broke the tow line have passed them by, leaving them eventually safe, either back on the Mary Celeste or perhaps rescued later?
Or is it possible that delaying by an hour would have allowed more fumes to build up, perhaps leading to a second, maybe more contained, but potentially lethal explosion right there on deck before they could even get into the boat, injuring or killing them all right there?
So, which is the harder possibility to accept? The tragic outcome of the choice he did make, abandoning ship too soon, perhaps, or the potentially equally catastrophic outcome he might have faced if he'd waited? The risk taken versus the risk possibly avoided. What do you think? We'd love to hear your thoughts.